Hello everyone, this is going to be part 1 of my Rubik's 4x4 tutorial. I'm using a Rubik's Revenge, lubricated. It's very loose. And let's get started. Okay, so first we're going to learn the notation. As with the Rubik's 3x3, oh yes, and I'd like to include a note here. Before watching this video, you're going to want to know how to solve a 3x3, preferably using the Friedrich method. And as with 3x3, this is R, U, so on and so forth. But these inner slices also have notation. This inner slice would be R, little r, and R followed by a little r. And it follows the same direction as the R slice. As with this, L little l, U little u, and so on and so forth. And each is attached to their corresponding face. Okay, there's also another thing I'd like to explain. This is something with all even layered cubes. All even layered cubes. In all even layered cubes, you must fix the centers yourself. As with the 6x6, you must also fix all the centers yourself. But on an odd layered cube, the centers are already in place and you cannot switch the orientation of the centers. But on an even layered cube, there's something that can happen in which you can switch the orientation of the centers. Here we have green opposite blue, or green next to blue, which is really wrong, and white next to white, or yellow next to white. And this is the reason behind something called parity. Let me show you an example of parity. This is an example of parity. This is the same, this is when a single edge is flipped. Now, this case cannot occur on a 3x3 except if you pop out an edge and flip it over. This is pretty much a parity case. This is called OLL parity because it only occurs when you want to finish OLL. And this case is impossible on any odd layer cubes, except on cases in like a 5x5 and a 7x7, in which during an edge pairing there's a flipped edge, but you'll figure that out later. So let me put this back together. That is a certain case of parity that we will be learning how to fix in the next few minutes. Now that we are equipped with all the information we need, we can begin to solve the 4x4. So let's scramble. Alright, the first step in solving your 4x4 is to orient the centers. Normally what I do is first I solve white, then I do yellow opposite, and then I use something that I use to remember the orientation of the centers to get the rest of them correct. So, let's find two centerpieces. Here we can see that we have one here and one here. We're just going to move the U layer so that we could pair them up and create a 2x1 bar. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to preserve these 2x1 bars and make two of them. So here's another centerpiece, and the last one is right here. Now these two pieces are already oriented so that you could just bring them up and create a 2x1 bar. But whenever making another 2x1 bar, you always want to make sure that you don't mess up the first one, otherwise you'll be back where you started. So now we create this 2x1 bar, and we can easily pair them up to make our first center. Now we put white on bottom, and we want to solve this center. So we turn the cube on its side. Here we see that we already have one 2x1 bar created. We want to take the vertical one, bring it up, rotate the layer twice, and put it back. Now we can see that we have the 2x1 bar on the top. Now we want to create the next bar. orient the pieces, pair up. Now, if we put it up in the top layer the same way like we did before, we can't really do that. So when you put the second 2x1 bar up in the top layer, you always want to make sure that the one coming up replaces the one in the top. So now that you have your second center, the yellow center. Now you want to turn the cube on the side. The thing that I use to remember the orientation of the centers is red, white, and blue. Let me demonstrate. Here on a 3x3, you can see that if you hold red on top, it's red, white, and blue in a clockwise fashion. This is what I use to remember the orientation of the centers. So we can solve red on any side. So here we have a already completed 2x1. Make it vertical so that when we turn these layers we don't mess it up. Two center pieces. Make sure that we can pair them up correctly and create another 2x1 bar, and then make our next center. So using our little remembering device, we can see that red, white, and blue must go here. We already see that we have a 2x1 bar here. So what you want to do here is bring this up, place this next to where that center used to be, right here, and then place it back so that we can create another 2x1. Now we can just pair it up, making sure that this bar coming up replaces the original bar. Now for the last two centers. The last two centers aren't nearly as complicated on a 4x4 as on a 6x6 or 7x7. So we can tell that opposite of blue goes green. So green must go here and orange must go here. So since we have these diagonal center type things, we want to bring one up, turn this layer, place it next to where that center used to be, and bring it down. And I seem to have made a mistake, so I'm going to correct that. Alright, now we're down to the last two centers, and since my epic failure has been corrected, we can begin to solve them. So, since we have this diagonal thing, we can just bring this up, twist it around, so that it's next to where the original center was, and bring it down. Now we see that we have two 2x1s, and we can bring it up so that it's replacing it. But make sure that you have the correct color scheme: blue, green, orange, red. Okay, we're good. So, bring it up, making sure to replace you two. There we go. Now that we're done with the centers, we can begin to edge pair, the favorite part of everyone's solve. Alright, so here I've set up a case. This may not look like much to you, but here I can see that we can pair up these two edges. When you're pairing edges, you always want to look for one edge and then the other, and then bring them on to the same face. So here we can see that the colors are opposite and they're on two different layers. This is the best edge case that we can have. So here we're going to misalign the centers for a second so that we can pair the edges up. But this edge isn't solved yet because we still have to fix the centers. So bring it up into the top layer and bring a random edge pair down, like this one that hasn't been solved, and replace the centers. And since you used a random edge pair instead of the edge pair that you just created, we have successfully solved this edge. Now let's look for another pair. Perfect, right here. Perfect. I didn't even set that up. Perfect. Okay, so here we can see that we can just bring over the edge and up into the top layer, random edge in, and then we revert the centers.